Hello! Hi there! Welcome to Guiding Voice podcast series, The Guiding Voice for a Better Future. This podcast is to help students and young professionals to shape their careers. In every episode, we interact with industry experts and drive some insightful conversations that will help our audience learn great things. We also share an interesting trivia and fun fact about the IT world towards the end of every episode. Thank you for tuning in. This is Naveen and I'm with my co-host Sudhakar. Dear listeners, we come across this statement again and again. Only thing that remains constant is change. Also, there is another adage. Our only security is our ability to change. I also want to share another great quote on resilience by Nelson Mandela. And it goes like this. Do not judge me by my success. Judge me by how many times I fell down and got back up again. Very, very motivating and inspiring. Alright. So this pandemic has proven the importance of adapting faster to change, being agile, being resilient, to be able to cope up with the tough times and deal with the change effectively.
So for today's episode, we picked up a topic around the importance of change agility and resilience. And we are pleased to welcome Kunal to our show to share his insights. Kunal Khurana has been working in the corporate world for more than 13 years now. For the last 6 years, he has been associated with KPMG. Kunal has extensive experience in learning and development and has organized numerous leadership and fun events in person and virtually. Outside of work, Kunal loves to spend time with his 6-year-old daughter, reading books, cook for the family, and watch the online content. Kunal, welcome to our show.
Thank you very much, Sudhakar and Naveen, and thank you for giving me this opportunity to be with you today and share my experiences with you.
Thanks, Kunal.
Let's start with your career journey. How did it all start and how did you reach the current stage with KPMG?
Yeah, so I started with a company called Citi Financial. This was way back in 2007. I had graduated from IMT Ghaziabad. I'd done MBA from there. And I started as an analyst with Citi Financial. I always wanted to get into a role which was a very marketing-oriented role, right? Since I had majored in marketing in my MBA, I wanted to be a brand manager, a marketing manager. I never thought that I will get into training. And honestly, there was no epiphany that happened that one day I suddenly realized that this is what my calling is. It all happened by chance. Before KPMG, I was working with IBM, and one fine day, my manager called me to her office and said that I would like you to lead a team of trainers. And I think that you will do very well as a training team lead. That's how I got into training. I started with delivering technical training, creating a roadmap for the new joiners into IBM and identifying their technical needs and taking them through the curriculum. And then, when I moved to KPMG, there was a full-time opportunity that came to me in the training space. And that's how I got into learning and development. And I must say that, it's been a wonderful journey. I've been in this field for about 9 years now, and I'm really enjoying it and no regrets at all of not having gotten an opportunity as a brand manager or a marketing manager. I think this is what my calling is, and I'm happy to do it.
Thank you for providing the broader perspective on career planning, Kunal. During the initial part of the career, someone needs to focus on laying the foundation for the better and bigger calling in a way. And we really appreciate you proposing this wonderful topic for our discussion today. What is the motivation behind this?
Right. So the topic that I would really like to talk about is change agility and in part also resilience. There is a term in the business world, I'm not sure how many of the listeners are familiar with it, but in 1928, a term called VUCA was coined, which is volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. This term was used to describe the business world. And For our listeners, if you can imagine, if the business world was termed as VUCA in 1928, then what would we say about the environment in 2020? I think it has increased, elevated manifold in 2020, and we are now in a world which is VUCA square. Now, the reason why change agility is important is because all the dynamism that is happening around us and the uncertainty and ambiguity that we are living in has led us to believe that we need to be very agile strategically and also in terms of execution. This is important because we need to optimize our resources and minimize the impact on business. Therefore, strategic agility in today's times has gained a lot of importance. And why resilience is important is because in this current environment, we've seen the downfall of a lot of companies. We've seen the downfall of a lot of people. It's very unfortunate that this has happened. But all these companies and people that have been impacted have to now come up the curve and bounce back. Therefore, it's extremely pertinent for us to possess the skill of resilience.
Kunal, it is very fascinating to see that VUCA was defined way back. Now, can we talk a little bit about what are certain myths about change?
Absolutely. So I think the biggest myth about change is that as a person gets older, the person is not able to change. The person gets very fixed in the kind of ideas that he or she has. I think it is imperative for us to understand that for anybody to grow in life, change has to happen. And like you said at the beginning of the session, change is the only constant. Human beings have evolved from being historically a species that was not able to think too much but was only able to do. I think it is extremely important for everybody to realize that the moment you stop changing, which has a connotation of evolution, you will stop growing as an individual. And especially in the business world, there are lots of curveballs that will come your way throughout your career. And it's a long span of career that people have today, right? Nobody wants to retire at the age of 58. Everybody wants to continue working till the time they're physically and mentally able to do that. And therefore, it is extremely important for every individual to understand that change is something that we have to live with. We have to understand how to manage it and deal with it.
All right, so that makes sense, Kunal. And how can one be successful in managing change? And can you share certain examples of successful change management scenarios that you are part of or even heard of?
Absolutely. Change is essential to the DNA of every person in the world. I don't even say the business world, but any person living on this planet has to adapt to change. Now, what has happened in the last few years is that technology has crept into our lives to a very deep level. You talk about technology advancements. I think as a kid who's grown up in the 90s, I've seen the invent of computers. At that point of time, the kind of things that used to happen with a computer was very, very basic. And in fact, if the millennials were to understand and see what happened in the 90s, they would actually be very surprised because they would think that this is very primitive. But when we talk about technological advancements, even up to, let's say, 2020, the advancement used to happen every 3 years, every 4 years, and we used to think that there is a technological upgrade. In 2020, I think things have moved at such a fast pace and the whole virtualization agenda has gotten accelerated manifold. And the change that I have been a part of and I've kind of driven in the organization where I am is in the learning and development space. We used to do a lot of in-person workshops, a lot of in-person training used to be imparted to colleagues across levels. In the last 7 months, we've kind of transformed all of that to a virtual mode. And this has happened only because of the change management that we have driven in the organization. as a learning and development professional, about 7 months ago, even I felt that the maximum effectiveness of a training can only be derived from an in-person workshop, because that is when the experience is the best. But the last 7 months have taught us that a lot more can be achieved when people are on the go, when people get into self-paced learning, and there is a whole lot of simulation that we can make people experience even virtually. Therefore, 2020 has really accelerated the whole agenda of virtualization, and that has become a key for every business in the corporate world.
Kunal, if we need to see or look at the top three things that this unprecedented situation gave us as an opportunity, what will those three be?
That's a great question, Sudhakar. I think one of the key skills that people need to really hone at this time and even going forward is empathy. This is something that we were talking about even before the whole pandemic situation magnified. But I think empathy is extremely important, especially in today's scenario. The reason I'm saying that is because while we're in this situation and we've all kind of formed a routine of going about our daily chores and working and doing household responsibilities, there is a lot on everybody's mind. That fear of getting the infection, that insecurity of not being able to help the loved ones who get infected, that anxiety of being at home for months on end is, I think, taking a toll on everybody, not only mentally, but even physically, because there's a lot more that we are all doing in today's times. And therefore, it is extremely important for us as colleagues and especially as leaders to understand that our team members, our peers are going through a lot mentally and physically. You know, the year has been tough for some people. It has been turbulent for some people, but it has been brutal for a lot of people. And that is something that we need to understand and empathize with our colleagues and team members, because this is the time when they all need our support. And this is only going to increase going forward. Even once we come back to the physical office space, empathy is going to be a skill that is going to be extremely important, because especially in today's times when there is so much distraction all around us, it takes a lot of mental bandwidth, and therefore the support of each other becomes even more pertinent.
That's amazing. On that note, Kunal, can you share some inspiring stories about resilience in your personal or professional life that are with you for long?
I think the biggest example of resilience that I can share with you, Sudhakar and Naveen, is that of my father. My father is a person who got into different trades through his career. He's in the last 40 years or so, he has been in multiple fields. He has picked up various lines of work, because what has happened is that every time he's gotten into something and he started to do well, unfortunately, there has been a pause and he's had to kind of discontinue that business. And therefore, every time I used to see him come up from scratch and rise from the ashes is something that has always motivated me. And even today, this whole pandemic situation has kind of impacted his business tremendously. And he's now looking for a new avenue in which he can make his career going forward. Even at the age of 65, if a person has the motivation and drive to do that, I think that's extremely inspirational and encouraging for all the young people around. And this is something that everybody must learn from. Like we were talking about change earlier, I think the biggest change that needs to happen is the change in mindset, where we accept the fact that life has to go on no matter what.
Hey, Kunal, what are your tips for the students and young professionals from the change and resilience perspective?
So what I would like to tell the listeners, Naveen and Sudhakar, is a trifecta approach is what we need to adopt. A trifecta approach where the first one is accept, the second one is transform, and the third one is sustain. What I mean by this is that the first step in any change management exercise is to accept the fact that there is going to be dynamism and there will be situations that will trigger change. We need to accept that and imbibe in us the quality to put behind what has happened to impact us negatively and move forward. The second one is to transform. While we are moving from point A to point B, there will be multiple challenges and roadblocks that will hit us. There will be curveballs that we will have to manage and deal with. But we have to be resilient enough and tenacious enough to move ahead without getting impeded by any of these roadblocks or challenges. And the third is sustain. By this, I mean that once we have reached the point of change, we have to continue on that journey and not only continue in the same sphere, but we have to also ensure that we elevate the sphere and move to the next orbit. That is extremely important because that is what is going to lead us to the next level. And through this trifecta approach, we are going to be able to master the art of resilience. And I think this is extremely important, especially in business going forward, where changes are going to happen not only technologically, but even in other spheres of the corporate. This trifecta approach is going to be extremely important for every individual to adopt. Because like they say, difficult roads often lead to beautiful destinations. The journey may not be easy, but when we reach the destination, the pathway that has led to that place is going to be worth it.
Thank you so much, Kunal, for joining us today to share your thoughts on this important topic. It was indeed a great discussion on change agility and resilience.
Naveen and Sudhakar, thank you very much for having me on your channel. It was a great conversation. Look forward to having more such conversations with you all. And I hope it was beneficial for the listeners.
Thank you so much, Kunal, for joining us.
Dear listeners, to know more about our speaker and the content, visit or follow us on social media. We are available on LinkedIn, Facebook, Insta, Twitter, Pinterest, and also on YouTube. Just search for The Guiding Voice and follow, like, subscribe to us, and also please share within your network. Also, feel free to email us at The Guiding Voice for You. That is THEGUIDINGVOICE 4 as a digit U letter at gmail.com, or WhatsApp us on India number 9494587187, and we will be happy to collaborate with you.
Alright, so it brings us to the trivia segment of today's episode. And today's trivia is about an operating system. Most of you might have heard about Ubuntu, but wondering what is it named after? Ubuntu is one of the most popular distributions of Linux, and the word comes from African word, which stands for I am because of you. Interesting, isn't it? Thank you for listening. There is more in store, folks. Stay tuned. Have a wonderful time. Take care. Be safe. Until next time. Bye-bye.